there are so many things that you can learn from different experiences, and you never know where one's going to lead to another.
Hello. Welcome to the Sports Biz Camps Speaker Series. This is Patrick Stack, co-founder of Sports Biz Camps. I'm excited to introduce our guest, Jake Hirshman. Before we do that, I did want to say thank you to our sponsor, Ortho Carolina. They're one of our foundational sponsors in 2019. They helped bring a lot of students to camp, and they're supporting us again this year, and we can't tell how much we appreciate their investment in the next generation of sports industry professionals, and that starts with education. So thank you again to Ortho Carolina. Moving on to our special guest, Jake Hirshman. Say hello.
How are you, Pat?
Doing well, Jake. How are you, buddy?
Great. Never better.
Jake, where are you joining us from? Everyone's going to see that pool and want to know where you live.
I am currently in Scottsdale, Arizona during this coronavirus pandemic and working from home here.
Nice, man. So Jake is with the PGA Tour. We're going to hear about his career path, kind of his responsibilities here at the PGA Tour. And honestly, Jake, we would love for you to also talk about your additional role as a content creator, leading a Life in the Front Office podcast as well. But before we jump into that, the people need to know a little more about Jake Hirshman, the person. So give us the stats. Your hometown, I think we're getting a glimpse of that based upon where you're at right now. Your college and your undergrad major, please.
Yeah, so Scottsdale, Arizona is hometown. Made the trek 4 hours west to the University of Redlands for undergrad, and then proud Ohio Bobcat, right, Pat?
Yes, sir.
For graduate school, master's in sports science and a master's in sports administration.
And then in college, you played baseball too, right?
Played baseball in college and was a business administration major.
Nice. What position? Baseball.
Pitcher.
Nice. Righty or lefty?
I was a righty. I tore my rotator cuff and had to switch to throwing submarine, which is kind of my interesting story or interesting fact one may not know. And yes, it was an interesting journey.
Well, that's one way to show grit, to fight through it. Like if my shoulder doesn't work, I'll figure out some other way to throw.
My body post playing is not excited, but we're figuring it out.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing. So we're going to start with warm up. So we've learned a little about your background, but now it's good to know like what you like and get a good sense of who you are based upon what you like. So we know you work at the PGA Tour, but have a background as a baseball player. Do you have a favorite golfer, past or present?
Favorite golfer's probably got to be Phil Mickelson, and just because he's Arizona State guy, just kind of hometown. Whenever I grew up here, if you go out to the Waste Management Open, that was kind of he was kind of the hometown favorite. So,
did I read that he's doing a tournament or like they're going to foursome with him and Tom Brady and Peyton Manning and Tiger Woods?
Apparently so.
That is awesome.
Do it. Who knows?
All right. So you're a pitcher.
Yep.
If you're pitching, who would you most want to face?
Well, I'd want to face probably either Bryce Harper or Mike Trout, because then if I was successful, I could say I struck out Bryce Harper or Mike Trout. And if I wasn't, then I can chalk it up to the two best players in the league.
There you go. That's what I was hoping for. I didn't think you were going to try and take like the easy route out of like easiest person to strike out. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
You eat food. Is a hot dog a sandwich?
No. And now that I'm a vegetarian, definitely not.
All right. So is there a favorite sports apparel brand, like a sports focused brand that you like to wear?
Big fan of Lululemon. I'm a Lululemon.
Oh, nice.
Yep.
Are you wearing Lulus right now?
I am.
There you go. We make great pants too. Like you can wear them to work or school and no one even knows.
Honestly, the quality has, I've had the same stuff for the last 5 years. Otherwise, like, typical college gear, you throw out after a year or two because you've worn it and it doesn't hold up.
So you are a podcast host yourself. So when you're not listening to your own podcast, Life in the Front Office, what is your favorite podcast to listen to?
The School of Greatness by Lewis Howes. And he was actually one of the first ones that I listened to kind of get an idea of like how I wanted to do mine, kind of how he structured it, some of the things that he talks about.
And what's that podcast about?
Honestly, it's about being great. It's all the different aspects of that go into life. Just some of the things that quite frankly people just don't like to talk about. Some of the hard conversations, hard things to think about. He does a really good job.
Awesome. You passed the initial test. We're going to move on to kind of the actual programming. So we build the program in 4 quarters, and we focus on different aspects of yourself and your career path throughout. And the first quarter is kind of going back to the early years. So you played baseball. Was there a specific athlete or team that really drove your fandom early on as a fan?
Yeah, the New York Yankees. My family is from New York, and in Little League, when my dad was our coach, he made us be the Yankees every single year. So that was my favorite team. And then you've got Jeter, Rivera, that whole era. Those are great guys to look up to.
And then you were playing baseball from the time you could remember through college, more or less. It was always baseball.
Yeah, and about 13 is when I stopped playing any other sport, and I was only baseball every single day.
Are you looking back? Are you happy with that decision? Or do you wish you would have played some other sports as well?
I think that decision was made for me. In the sense of the high school I went to was really competitive. I did try out for basketball, didn't make it. I tried out for golf. You had to shoot like 30-40 to even make the cut. Didn't make it. So our baseball team in high school, we won 2 state championships, if that says anything. And it's just so. Yeah, the decision was made for me, but now I don't play any baseball, and I've picked up all those other sports that I didn't play.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Seems never too early to start.
That's right.
And most memorable sports-related experience when you were young? Maybe it was playing, maybe it was watching.
Yeah, it definitely had to have been the state championships we won. Just knowing kind of what the whole team went through, and ultimately being at the top, and just that feeling of winning. It's something you always want to achieve and chase again and again.
That's awesome. Congratulations to you. All right, so second quarter. Now we're talking about kind of growing up, right? So when you were high school, around our students' ages, what did you think you were going to be, or what did you want to be when you grew up?
I was a little naive in thinking that I could still become a professional player somehow, some way. Even though I was nowhere near the best on our team, I had to fight just to make the team. I was, probably the first one there and the last one to leave, kind of thing. But, once I realized that there was a career in sports to some extent, when you play the video games, you kind of control your own dynasty. Like, I wanted to be a GM in that sense. I always enjoyed kind of the organizational thinking behind things.
Awesome. So you wanted to be a pro athlete, and then started to also think through there might be other jobs besides that in sports. So that was a part of your inclination early on.
Yep.
Because of video games, which is great.
Which I don't play anymore. So there you go.
You're too busy. You're too busy with your podcast.
That's right.
What do you remember to be the biggest challenge you faced as you made that transition from high school to college, especially as a student athlete?
Yeah, I think the biggest difference from high school to college is you're living on your own. So that was difficult, right? Everyone kind of goes through that depending on their background. I think the biggest challenge was then trying to prove yourself to a whole nother group of people, make new friends. And that's proved to be the same exact thing going from one job to the next, one city to the next. It's kind of this continuous challenge that you're not just going to face from high school to college. So figure out what you're going to learn from each challenge or each transition, and just learn from them, because there's going to be more.
Yeah, so maybe because you went to Redwood and you stepped outside of your comfort zone, you had to get yourself comfortable and learn how to assimilate. And obviously that's helped you in all your different job career opportunities.
Yeah, I only lived in Arizona my whole life, so it was going to a new state, new place, etc.
All right, man. You made it to halftime. Take a deep breath.
All right. Second half's always the hardest.
It's all downhill from here, my friend. So you go to college. You have an inclination that you might want to work in the sports industry. You pursue a graduate degree. And then how do you get from school to career? What is that pathway?
Yeah, from school, I would say my career actually started in school. And it started my sophomore year of college. It was my first internship at the minor league baseball team in town, Inland Empire 66ers. Was able to get an experience there, then the minor league hockey team, then at the Rose Bowl and at Special Olympics. I even was a strength coach during one of the summers when I was rehabbing. Just tried a lot of different things. And so I'd say that's when my career started. And then, quote unquote, when I was done with school, I went and worked for the Mariners in player development scouting, and then eventually went and worked for MLB with the Arizona Fall League, and then to Purdue, and then to PGA Tour. Each move has brought something completely different, and I've wanted to make each move for a completely different reason.
You've moved around a lot. I mean, what are some of the challenges associated with that? Clearly moving up and learning new things, but talk through how challenging that could be, especially knowing that a lot of our students have been going to the same schools or hanging out with the same friends their entire lives.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, right? Because you have your group of friends in high school, you have your group of friends in college. Well, then when you go and get a job, and if you don't move back home, you then don't have a group of friends. Both of your groups of friends are probably elsewhere, so you're keeping in touch via FaceTime or whenever you might see them home over the holidays. And they're still my best friends, right? But you have to figure out how to make best friends in the place that you are. And that might be people you work with, which can also be hard depending on how big of a group you're working with, right? If you're working with a small group versus a really large organization, depending on people are old or young, right? Like if everyone's got a family and you're not, and you're single, it's harder. And then I would say, the fact that everywhere's kind of brings a different culture, not only whether it's religious or demographics, but also weather. So for me, I went from Arizona to California. I was living the life. And then I went to Ohio for grad school. I learned what the winter was, kind of, sort of. I hated it, and I went back to Arizona for a year, and then I went to Indiana. I said, I'll give this winter thing a second try. I hated it even more, and so now I'm in Florida where it's nice and warm. And if I ever go home, I'm back in Arizona where it's nice and warm. So that's also, a big part as well. You kind of learn to deal with some of the different cultures and how it affects your lifestyle. I'm a big outdoors guy.
It's interesting, like growing up in the Midwest, or even for folks on the East Coast, they can go warm weather then back to cold weather, right? They can kind of make the switch. For the folks like you there from Arizona, they have a hard time moving east and being okay with it, right? But that's an important part of your of your career path, is that you need to be happy wherever you live, and sometimes weather is a part of that.
Absolutely. And time zones too, right? Like if I'm on the East Coast, all my family and friends more or less are 3 hours earlier. So that also presents a challenge too from your day perspective.
So you've got your job at the PGA Tour, but you're also an author, and you also are a podcast host. So maybe starting with the book, why did you co-author a book? Start with that.
Yeah, 20 Secrets to Success for NCAA Student Athletes Who Won't Go Pro.
That's a mouthful.
It was a mouthful. I thought long and hard about the title, and we couldn't go away from it. So we needed to explain what we were talking about. And it actually was one of those bedtime thoughts where you wake up and you write a note down in your phone because you didn't want to forget. And then from there, it launched. And the purpose and passion behind it was, as I mentioned, I tore my rotator cuff, got injured, kind of had that identity, oh crap moment of like, what am I going to do? Who am I? Baseball is no longer a part of me. Like, what do I represent? And then when I went to go to grad school, I played one more year and was able to coach after that. And when I was coaching, I saw the same thing that a lot of my teammates in the past were going through. I saw a lot of the guys just kind of unprepared, and I get it. Like, you got to focus on the moment, but you also have to prepare and take advantage of the moment and figure out how that can affect your future. And you got to think about them both at the same time. And it's not easy, but it's a book on half how to succeed as a student athlete, and then half how to transition out of sport and into life. Kind of like we just talked about, the transition out of sport and into life is really not a ton different than transitioning from high school to college and college to your job. It's all the same concept. It may be just a little bit different context. So when you think about it, it's sometimes people just don't know what they don't know. And so if we can provide some of those perspectives for people to think about, it can help impact them.
So kind of along the same lines, talk to me about the podcast. Yeah, like why shift gears to that? And I think more importantly, I guess 2 questions. How has that been beneficial for you? And then 2, how can some of our students take a page out of your book and start to try to do something similar?
Yeah, it's funny about the podcast because I never listened to podcasts. So I actually will joke about this. I never read when I was younger, and I wrote a book. And then I never listened to podcasts. and I started my own podcast. And I think the key to both of those things is putting yourself outside your comfort zone, trying to do something that you maybe aren't used to or you don't like. And you never know what you can kind of find when you start to do something different. And my brother actually got me into podcasts. He's like, dude, these are great. He's a big NPR fan. So I was like, I don't need to listen to your politics stuff, but I'll try some of the sports podcasts. And I started listening to a few, and then a couple of my mentors came to me with the idea of writing another book on careers in sports. What do you learn from careers in sports? How do you get your foot in the door? All that sort of stuff. And I said, guys, book sounds great, but let's do a podcast because I've been starting to listen to this. I feel like people in the younger generation will be more apt to listen to these as opposed to reading something. We can bring on a bunch of different people from across the industry, different diversity of perspectives and experiences, and ultimately provide advice and insights for those who are trying to get in their foot in the door. Because I had a lot of people who, like yourself, who were mentors and helped me get opportunities and help make introductions. And I've been fortunate. I recognize that too. I think awareness of that is a huge part of why I'm involved in Sports Biz Camps and understanding how, I've been fortunate. And then there are those that aren't as fortunate, and there's ways to help them, and how can we help them? Just some of those thoughts of recognizing some of the skill sets that you might need, or some of the people you might need to get in touch with or try and pick their brain, et cetera. And then how I've learned or how it's helped me from a production standpoint is I've got now 125 episodes or so, and going to continue, and we'll pass 200 and we'll keep going. But those are all people that are in my network, and that's going to continue to grow. Those people exponentially know a lot of other people if I ever needed another introduction for whatever it might be. And those are now friends too, right? So they're continuing that relationship, and maybe I have them on a second time, or maybe there's someone that I haven't talked to in a while that I worked with 2 years ago that I want to get in touch. I think they've got great perspectives, and let's get them on the podcast. And now we're able to reconnect. So it's provided a really good service for all involved. And then how someone could start. I mean, hey, think about a topic that you're passionate about. You've got to be passionate about it, right? You can't just start talking about sports because everyone's talking about sports. Everyone's got an opinion too. So think about maybe something that you think will help impact people. And if there is that thought or someone that you could also team up with, I think it's really advantageous to have a guest or a co-host so that you can balance perspectives and create, allow for the diversity piece of it, and see where it goes. Honestly, awesome. It started somewhere, and a couple people listen, and then a couple more, and then a couple more. And so you just got to keep at it. It's not going to grow with the light switch.
Awesome. Great answer. And we're kind of entering the fourth quarter. We call it Monday morning quarterback. So I know you're still relatively early in your career, and you've had not necessarily a bumpy road, but I'm sure there's things that you wish you would have known when you were in high school that you now know with respect to a career path in the sports industry. What are some of those things?
I think back to when I was in grad school, one of my best friends that I actually lived with, ironically enough, we were just chatting one night, and he'll remind me of this to this day. He'll call me sometimes just randomly, and he'll be like, hey, remember that time when you told me in the kitchen that all you wanted to do was work in baseball for the rest of your life? And I was like, yeah, I remember that. He goes, well, now you're in golf. And I said, yeah. And he goes, and you were in college athletics before that. And I'm like, okay, I get your point, right? So I think one of the things I wish I would have known is just be a little bit more open-minded. Obviously, everyone's got their dream, right? And they've got their passion, but there are so many things that you can learn from different experiences, and you never know where one's going to lead to another. And I think if you just have that open mindset, things just happen in life. They will, good things happen to good people if you just work hard and are open-minded.
Jake, thank you so much. 4 quarters down. Well, we call it the Hail Mary overtime here. You've got one last chance to share your wisdom and advice with these students before you never talk to them again. What's the one piece of advice you want to give them before you say goodbye?
it's like a Doug Flutie moment, on ESPN.
There's no way they know who Doug Flutie is.
Hey, when you sit downstairs when you're 6 and watch ESPN over and over again, you're bound to see a Doug Flutie replay. The one thing from an advice perspective, pursue your own dreams. Don't pursue someone else's. Don't pursue a dream just because you think it'd be cool to work for so-and-so. Don't pursue a job just because you think the title looks good or it'd be a great organization from a logo standpoint to be able to tell your friends. Do what you want to do, and ultimately that's going to change, and that's okay, and just know that. But pursue your own dreams. I think back to people who are, whether they're lawyers or doctors, and they became lawyers or doctors because their parents were lawyers or doctors. Nothing wrong with that, right? But as long as they have the passion for it. So as long as you have the passion to do what you want to do, then you'll be successful.
Yeah, thanks, Jake. I think building on that, one of my friends in the industry, his name's DeAndre Watson, and he talks about that a lot. Run your own race, right? So it's both pursue something that is passionate to you, but also do it at the pace that makes sense for you. Don't be focused on what other people are doing or not doing, and that can be especially hard in these days, like with social media and all that stuff too. But do your thing.
Don't compare yourself to others.
Yeah, Jake, thank you so much. I want to say thank you to Ortho Carolina once again for their support. Without that support, this can't be a free opportunity for these high school students that so dearly want it and could use this type of educational experience and have the opportunity to learn from Jake. So Jake, thank you so much. Go jump in that pool. You've done a great job.
Appreciate it. Go Bobcats.
Thanks, buddy.